Do you ever wonder when you start listening to a podcast, do you ever wonder like how many takes the intro took? Like I listened to this podcast called Duncan Trussell Family Hour. I recommend it. It's pretty fun. And he actually had a show on Netflix called Midnight Gospel. And I always wonder, because he does the intro after the interview, and I always wonder how often he records those. Because if he's anything like me, he's on his like fifth take. If you haven't podcasted in like a week, you can feel kind of rusty. Hi, my name's Andrew Crusoe, and welcome back to WANDEROUS. For today's story, we're going to follow up with what I began last week. Yes, we are back in the continental U.S. because I feel like talking about that. And there are a few stories that I've never recorded before. And I'd like to record them for posterity and for my own, goofy memory, which is I drop bits sometimes. I think Steve Jobs used to say stuff like that, the interesting bit. He would actually think about the zeros and the ones and work it into his language. That's what it seemed like anyway. So when we last left off, I had just carpooled, was in the process, hadn't got all the way to Portland, Oregon yet. I started in Denver. And when we last left off, I had gotten a ride, a Craigslist ride, splitting gas in a creepy white van. I believe the driver, I was calling him JJ. We picked up a mountain man of sorts in Boulder, Colorado, and we were in the middle of making our way across the great continental divide, the great United States. Actually, technically, we were to the west of the continental divide because we were already... Actually, I think... No, we didn't, because the continental divide would have been north in Wyoming, and we went around the other way. Of course, you can drive directly west and end up going through Nevada. We didn't go that way. We went up around a bit through. There are a few ways you can go. We went north from Denver. And there was also a bit of a mishap with the fuel pump that was very stressful. But that's not the entertaining story that I'm going to tell you. It's not really much of a story. We were stuck and waiting for hours, and he was so stressed out he needed to get a new fuel pump. And guess what? It wasn't a fuel pump that was the problem. It was actually the filter. We got back, and they said, oh, we just had to give you a new filter, and we were on our way, and we were feeling pretty confident. You know, we got towed to, I think it was Laramie, Wyoming, for that first problem, and now that we were cruising along, we made our way up to Boise, and I told that story last week, wherein I heard one of the strangest statements I'd ever heard from a policeman. And you'll have to listen to last week's episode if you want to know what that is. If you have not already heard last week's episode, I very much recommend it. So I think it was that night, because we kept driving west and we really wanted to make it all the way. We really wanted to make it all the way to Portland. And we were about 5 miles away, heading down the highway, and we got pulled over. And we see the lights, and JJ pulls over to the side of the road, middle of almost nowhere, very dark, except for the lights of the cars around. And cop comes up, and JJ is visibly distressed. He is really uncomfortable. And I'm like, hey, car seems fine. We weren't speeding. And the cop says, hey, your taillight's out. You need to get that fixed. Can I see your license and registration, please? And I soon witness the utter dissolution of the fellowship of the van. That is pretty much what I could call it. Because we had been traveling for this was our second day, and we were so close. And the policeman comes back up to us and says, I need all of you guys to get out of the car. And I believe there were 2 police, actually. And I kind of get interrogated behind the van. And the policeman's like, how do you know these people? And I'm just trying not to freak out. I don't really know where I am. Just to reiterate what I said in the last episode, I didn't have a smartphone. I actually had a cell phone my grandfather lent me that was for old people, and the buttons were as big as my thumb. The numbers were huge. It was not a smartphone. I could text. It didn't have GPS. I didn't really know where I was. I had an iPod, also didn't have GPS. Sometimes the iPod could kind of figure out where I was based on Wi-Fi networks around, which uses a technology called Skyhook, which was kind of cool at the time. I think it's now used with laptops to figure out where you are for things like Google searches, and that's why your browser is always asking you, hey, do you want to share your location with BuzzFeed? They're using something like Skyhook to do that, pretty sure. So I tell him, okay, what's going on? I mean, I just met these guys on Craigslist, and I start to wonder, is this cop going to think I'm crazy? I mean, I'm being honest, and there's nothing wrong about carpooling on Craigslist. It can be risky, as I was learning. And I proceed to find out that JJ's license was either revoked or temporary. And the other guy, the mountain man, his license was a temporary, and neither of them should have been driving with anybody else in a vehicle. But the real cherry on top, the thing that really pissed me off, was I found out that, and the cops told me this, that the plates did not match the van. Now, if you don't know, that is super, super illegal. And I'm trying to recall exactly how this went, but I believe JJ started explaining, once we got back together, he started explaining that, or maybe he just explained it to me later, because the following day he called me and said, what was that 411 service you mentioned? And I was like, oh, it's Goog 411. Now, Goog 411 was really cool. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a free service that Google provided where you could dial 1-800-GOOG 411, and you could talk to a robot, and it was kind of like Google Maps, but you were talking to a robot, and you could ask for phone numbers and addresses, and it was all, talking to a robot. And he called me the following day to ask me that number because he needed to find a lawyer for what was about to happen. And I proceeded to find out that he started this journey in Florida, and he was making his way almost as far as you can go, at least in the lower 48 states, almost as far as you can go, and he got busted 5 miles away from his destination. I don't really know what meaning to attach to that. I think it's kind of funny now, but apparently he swapped plates from another vehicle he had in Florida, didn't want to pay to get this vehicle re-registered. And I don't know this guy's life. I'm not going to sit here and judge him. I'm going to judge him a bit for going so far illegally. It doesn't usually end well. But I don't know this guy's situation. Maybe he couldn't afford the vehicle registration. Maybe he was really down on his luck. I don't know. But usually, bad idea to swap plates. I would say always, not usually, always a bad idea to take the license plates off of another vehicle and put it on a different vehicle. I don't know. I really wish I'd asked him more about that. He didn't really want to talk about it too much, as you can imagine. Because the cops are going to think you've stolen this vehicle, you idiot. That's what they're going to think. It's really, 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 really illegal, obviously. So the cops kind of huddle, and I'm like, this is not, am I going to, all these thoughts go through my head. My mind starts racing, and I start thinking, are they going to put us in a jail cell? I haven't broken the law. I didn't know this status. I'm just carpooling with someone. I'm not really responsible for this vehicle. I'm not the owner. The owner agreed to split the gas with me. He did misrepresent the efficiency of the vehicle, by the way. And the police come back around and they say, yeah, we can't let you proceed. And I was like, officer, there must be a way. Like, I'm staying with a friend tonight. Never mind, it was someone on Couchsurfing. I wasn't going to explain the concept of couchsurfing.com to a state patroller, not at what must have been, I think this was like 10 o'clock at night at this point. We had been stopped on the side of the road for maybe even a half an hour, I don't know. And we were so close. And they said no. And they spoke to us individually. I wasn't being charged with anything. The mountain man wasn't going to be charged with anything, but they were bringing JJ in for some serious questioning. And all they could do for us, they said, well, we're going to take you. Can you have your friend pick you up? And I'm like, I guess so. I mean, it's really late, but he's like, all we can do, we're going to drop you off a little bit down the road. We're going to drop you off at this Love's gas station, this fuel station. So I get just kind of ushered, we could say. I get ushered into the back of this cop car, with the fence. I've only been in the back of a cop car. That was like about 3 times, and they were all related to hitchhiking or this situation. So we're basically whisked down the highway and relatively quickly deposited at the Love's gas station. And one of the funniest things happened at this point. I'll never forget this. So the cops were like, yeah, you got in touch with your friend. And I call my friend, and he picks up the phone and is just groggy, and I feel terrible. And I tell him a bit about what happened. And I turn to my right, and the mountain man guy, this real grizzled, very, you could say hirsute human being, very hairy human being, long beard, gray beard, has a small, black backpack. Probably would creep some people out, if I'm being really honest about his appearance. I go, hey man, are you okay? Where are you staying? Do you want my friend to take you into town? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm like, you sure? And I swear to God, he said something, I think he just said, I'm out. And he sprinted across the parking lot, hopped over a fallen tree. He hops over a log and disappeared into the blackness of the forest. And I never saw him again. And I'll never forget watching this man disappear. I gotta believe that he set up a tarp and just roughed it. I think it must have been a couple minutes after the police left, because I can't imagine him doing that. This was over 10 years ago. No, over 15 years ago, actually. Like I said, it happened in 2009. But I'll never forget watching him hop over a log and disappear into the forest. It sounds, I don't know. It's like a scene in a movie or something. It's a very odd thing to just suddenly this person just disappears and can survive out there. But like I said, he really looked like a mountain man. So my couch surfing host picks me up, takes me very, very short distance into town, but just long enough to where I wouldn't want to walk. I had way too much crap in my backpack at that point. I probably had 30 pounds of stuff. I had, 17 kilos, 18 kilos, too much stuff. I'm much better at packing light now. And the finale of the night was that I didn't even get a bed, which I'm not going to complain, because Couchsurfing is a free traveler network. But that night, after that exhausting experience, and then I slept on the floor. But I did get a pad, and it actually wasn't bad. It was pretty cool, but it was a very small place. I have these very weird, very fuzzy memories of the place. I think it was like a share house, and I felt bad because he could only host me one night, and I had a host set up for the following night where I ended up staying for like a week and ended up like watching their kids, and it was really, really lovely. It was such a lovely experience to be in Portland and be kind of in the, I think it was a northwest area. I wish that I'd recorded, and written more about that at the time, because there's a lot of little moments I'm sure that I've forgotten and have just gotten, I don't know, archived into I probably need to be hypnotized to remember some of that stuff. But yeah, it definitely got better from there. But getting over there was a real trip. It was a real trip. And I ended up staying. Actually, I didn't babysit the kids the next host. The next host after that was in a house that had like 4 or 5 roommates, and 2 of them were comedians. And this is the thing, when you're in your early 20s and you're just like traveling like a nomad. I mean, this was my first time feeling that out. And obviously it's less scary in your own country. You don't have to worry about language differences. I mean, the perception is that it will be less scary in your own country. In reality, I would say, like doing this in Japan or even doing this in Indonesia is safer than doing it in the USA, in my opinion. But again, it depends. It depends on the region. There are islands in Indonesia where you probably wouldn't want to do that. But something like on Bali, or hitchhiking in like Sri Lanka. I had such lovely times in Sri Lanka, which I will get to in this podcast as well. Incredibly safe. And that's something that you'll learn is people, by and large, across the world, although we come in very different looking packages, we are incredibly similar underneath that wrapping. And the biggest division that I've seen actually is language. If we cannot effectively communicate, which is what I endeavor to do on this podcast, if we cannot effectively communicate, then we can't understand each other and we can't build trust. At least it takes a lot longer to build trust. You have to really, observe behavior. But if someone understands the way you think about the world, and that's how we learn how someone thinks about the world, the way that they communicate, the language that they use gives us hundreds of little signals and cues about someone's self-concept, world concept, belief systems, all these things. So I guess I'm just reflecting on that a little bit today. So that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this story and these musings. I will resume my normal European content very soon, maybe next week. We'll see how I feel. And I want to thank you again for listening to this show. I really, really appreciate comments. I really appreciate feedback. And I super duper appreciate people who support this show at just $5 a month, which I think that's the price of like 3 ounces of coffee at this point. For $5 a month, you get 28 hours. Yeah, over 28 hours of audiobook content. You can cancel at any time, and you also get a bunch of ebook content as well, and archival photos and video that I've done. I had a series earlier this year of my Mount Fuji climb, which was really fun. Really, really special experience, and I'm looking forward to getting to that part as well. But we have to get to Istanbul. We have to get to Kathmandu. Those stories are coming up. I know I keep teasing them. There's a lot of things that happen in France, though, and I want to finish that story first because Paris, I haven't even talked about Paris yet. That I'm going to try to get to that soon. So thanks again for listening. You can always follow me everywhere, @ Hello Crusoe, Hello Crusoe. And at $10 a month, you actually get behind-the-scenes photos and other bonuses from this show. And that is something that I really enjoy sharing, and especially these photos of France and these very cool little like hidden places. I got to go to a place where they were harvesting salt, and they'd made all these bird blinds where you could spy on the birds. I really like that photo shoot. Most recently, I shared some wonderful perspectives from the hill that Notre Dame de la Garde is perched upon in Marseille, in the south of France. Very beautiful place. So that's also available to you. That's patreon.com/Hello Crusoe. You can check that out. If you're not already, you can please subscribe to this show on Spotify. It's Wanderous, WANDREOUS. If you are listening on Patreon, please, there's a link in the show notes to this very episode where you can follow it on Spotify. You can listen to it on all your devices. And it helps with the algorithm and all those things. And you just make sure you don't miss anything. And periodically, I do also do more not safe for work content, maybe we could say. Well, I'll release a special episode of this show, and that's only available for people who support the show at $20. These tiers might change, but they probably won't. But if you're listening to this like in 2030, I don't know. But in the 2020s, this is probably going to be the situation. And though I've already released a fair amount of really kind of spicy behind-the-scenes things that happened to me during this trip that I don't want to be public, and that's $20 a month, which is the price for a venti at Starbucks now. Maybe. I don't go to Starbucks. But anyway, the majority of the content on my Patreon page is free, so you are absolutely welcome. Please go and follow that for free. You can follow my Patreon for free. And I'm just happy to get comments on these and to just hear what you think of this show. You don't need to support it monetarily, but if you do, you get a lot for your money. You get a lot for your money, and your money goes to help support things like health insurance when I'm traveling, and other expenses like visas and things like that. And it's just a wonderful relationship that I have with my listeners, and I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions, you're always welcome to leave a comment on patreon.com, or you can go to andrewcrusoe.com/contact and reach out to me there. Thanks again for listening to Wanderous, and yeah, be safe out there, and I'll see you next time.